Okay. Yeah, there's great system growth in when we have different things that are presenting in our families. And so while it does create a change, there's a dynamic, systemic change too. Hmm. So coming here today, did you know that this was going to be on autism? Okay. And so what was on your mind? Did you have things that were on your mind? Like, so in your case, you have a personal example, but have you are struggling with some things that you run into, some behaviors, questions that you might have? And that the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure I'm focusing in the right areas when I do present the material to you, you know?
So we have a couple of kids that are in the program, the
Hmm.
parents program, that has autism kids around now.
Okay. Okay.
And we have to get like a lot more from them.
Mm.
And it's like ability to help that,
Yes.
they're just not communicating.
Yes.
But we love them.
Yes. Yes. And so, when you say support, so one of the things is it about behaviors that you're seeing that you're like, what do I do? Or is it more about kind of up front knowing what to do?
So what's amazing is
Mm-hmm.
they support so well, but often have never learned that they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Will withdraw or have some kind of like motor stuff going on
Mm-hmm.
and hyperactivity.
Mm-hmm.
This is a disorder. They have such a system going on.
Yes.
That often one of them will cannot just stand on the app together and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
real.
Yes. Yes.
What's going on.
Yeah. That's support. Mm-hmm.
They either have another one will
Mm-hmm.
step up.
Mm-hmm.
But we can help that.
Right. Yeah, that supportive person right there to kind of help guide. Yeah. Okay. Um, so what we know, kind of what autism is, right? And this is really cool because, you know, in so there's the right hemisphere and there's a left hemisphere of the brain, okay? And often with autistic, presenting with autism spectrum uh, behaviors disorder, however you want to say it, they are actually right weak. We call it right weak. And you're going to see, right, that the big picture, I'll toss this around, by the way. So you're going to see that there's normal functioning is on this left side, but really what people are seeing is that they have a tough time with obviously social skills, some behavioral things, but really what's happening is it's anxiety. So a lot of times it's stemming from anxiety, and it's really, think about yourself having anxiety, right? And you think about what are some of those things that help you through your anxiety. You know, they might be a little different than a person with autism, but that's really the thought process. The thought process is really understanding that underlying the experience of someone who has autism, ASD, they are having anxiety. So how do I support them in managing that anxiety? Okay, so you and I, we might take some breaths, we might even take a walk, we might, do those kinds of things. But it's, if you can imagine it going kind of almost like 100 times more than what we would experience in their anxiety. So if you have that kind of hat on, you're going to be able to, support that person a little bit better. And there's these stages of kind of the presentation. So if you see them, like behaviors, kind of like, movement is one of the, movement can be constant or it can be showing you something. And so you already know something's happening, okay? And so so sometimes lighting makes a difference, noises. I mean, if I were sitting here, and maybe you might be bothered by this if I were to do this on the table, but for them, it sounds like it is the loudest noise ever, okay? So it's just really being sensitive to their surroundings, okay? Yep, very sensitive. And so for example, if they're in a room like this with fluorescent lights, you may just want to turn off lights, just decrease the sensory things that are going on around them. Yes. Mm-hmm.
this young man, he kept taking one step on the top of the escalator, then he'd move his foot back. One more step, move his foot back. And it started to interrupt the flow of other people trying to go down the escalator. And I suggested the elevator. And then finally the grandma came up and they all left and go another route. But he just could not take that first step to go down on that escalator. It was very, very challenging for him.
And you're bringing up a good example, because what we want to do is we're just keenly aware, and being keenly aware of their experience, because in reality it's very different than ours. So environmentally, they are taking in things much more at an intense level than we are. And we don't understand it because there's something natural about what we do every day, okay? But for them, it's like they're going into like a storm every day, going, okay, I mean, they're not really thinking about that, but that's what's happening for them. And yes. Mm-hmm.
So, the twins I mentioned, they do, I think they have probably more sensitivity to loud noises, like you said. One of the challenges we have is that we've got a lot of kids often in the house who are being really loud. And I think we have a desire to always have the twins be very much included and never kind of, brought to a separate room or that kind of thing, because we want them to be a part of it, but it can get really overwhelming for them too. So what do you kind of recommend? We don't want to isolate them by saying, oh, you might want to come into the kitchen, but.
Well, actually, here's what I would recommend. I would recommend that so in those kinds of situations, just identifying that, they need some sensitivity around it, is taking breaks. And those breaks can actually be sensory stimulating, like even like Play-Doh, or you can actually do, like if you fill up a balloon with rice, something sensory, okay? I'm trying to think of some other things that are easy to do. But just something that can soothe them for a few minutes and then bring them back in or something. So you can just take sensory breaks, okay? And just support the journey. So yeah, in some ways what we really want to do is we want to integrate, young people to be all together, not to have this separation. So anytime we can do that. But also one of the things you can do is even, in teaching the other children, right, that are there, or young people, I don't know exactly all the ages, sorry, they're probably a little bit older, 13 and up, right, something like that? All ages, okay, all right. And teaching them, maybe it's just, everybody's taking a sensory break, everybody's settling down, because what we see today, right, is that there's more people who are, we've got a lot of phone time, a lot of electronics. I would absolutely I'm pretty sure you guys don't do that here, but just, get that motor going, get the sensory motor stuff going, but the computer, things like that, they love it, but it's not necessarily good. Okay? Yeah. And so so anyways, I'll pass this around, but this is, if you look at the underactivation, that's what's really happening for a young person who's having autism. And so the impulsivity is there. Yeah, sir.
Around a decade ago or so, the psychology industry was talking about hypersensitivity, people who are hypersensitive. Is this connected?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a hypersensitivity to touch, to noise, to everything. So is that what you're talking about? Or? Well, I mean, that I'm not. So, I'd have to look up a little bit more information about that for adults, because I'm not sure about the hypersensitivity. Now, that could be it's only been about 25 years that autism has really come into like it just started 25 years ago, that it came into a place of understanding it differently. Well, 25 years ago, right, is when they started to look at it differently. So I believe that in the best answer I can give you with the current knowledge I have about it is that some people are presenting with some autistic behavioral symptoms as an adult, but they may not have been diagnosed. That doesn't mean that you can't be diagnosed as an adult, but that's just not an area that I have a lot of knowledge in that particular area. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And that's actually, as you're passing this around, that is most of the time a right brain weakness too, is ADHD. So actually, autistic children present with ADHD symptoms. A lot of times they're hard to focus, non-attentive, hyperactive, just having to move, run around. But again, what they're trying to do is this anxiety at the base. They're trying to, it's like I'm trying to get away from it. And that's really what's happening, it's the anxiety. And so if there's some medication involved, sometimes it can be related to the ADHD, but also can be anxiety. So our program we're not medication. What we do is we focus on nutrition, okay? We actually test and a lot of different areas: auditory, visual, anything motor sensory, all the senses. We do a cognitive testing as well. And so we want to see what's going on with the whole child. So nutrition is a huge part of it. Oh yeah, come on. Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So there's a spectrum for sure of autism. And so they have sort of on this side of the, we call it the, less severe side, I guess, is they're able, probably presenting much like the twins. And then there's some, as we kind of move over, doesn't always mean nonverbal, means that they're, on the way, kind of more severe side. But it does mean that there's some consideration for this young person, So when we go through like what I handed out to you, right? So we're seeing an increase in autism. And why? Because part of it is because there's some environmental factors. There's vaccinations. There's stuff that, vaccinations, environmental factors. There's nutritional things that are going on. And so there's a lot of reasons why this is happening, but there's also biological things too, of course. So, but we're looking at all of that when we are understanding autism, okay? And so this one is the function of autism. And this is, we're not going to go through it, but what it does do is it provides you a lot of questions to be asking yourself, okay, when you're working with children, okay, with who have autism. So this is going to be this, when we talk about creating awareness, and you're saying, how do we work with these young people? So it's not one person's the same as another, right? And it's also, by the way, one thing that works one day may not work the next day, okay? So when we have a weak young person, in this case, presenting as autism, what helps them is a reward system. So taking things away is not going to be the best thing to do, because actually they fear that. Then they'll remember it. They have a pretty good memory of what they experience, And so if something happened on the playground, that playground may have, just in general, may have an it's a negative experience, may have a negative experience every time they go to the playground. So it's that's kind of that hypersensitivity to all things. And again, we're talking about a spectrum here. So again, you're going to see some kids who might present with that and some kids that may not. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. So, yeah. And what is it you're trying to do with that? Oh, okay. Okay. And is she at least acknowledging that now, though? I mean, is that something that's being acknowledged? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, that's challenging. Well, and I would say, so what I hear your question being is that how do I talk to the parent about maybe some questions I might have about the young people, or do you want to? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I assume you're asking just that. Yes. 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 Mm-hmm. So okay. So one of the things that's popping into my head is that do the twins have any other people in their lives? Like sometimes there can be some case management for. Okay. Mm-hmm. So okay. So there's a lot of it sounds like a challenge for mom in general. I mean, sometimes parents who, and I'm not. This is generalizing, of course. This is not. I'm just saying that sometimes parents are looking for places, right, to have support for their young person, and they are managing a lot at home, and so just being able to bring them somewhere is like a blessing. And so in this case, I would say I would maybe ask the question: are there other people that are working with the twins, and see if you could get a release to speak to them a little bit more. And there, it could be again, if it's a case manager, or even a doctor, like getting a release of information just to say, hey, and asking. Of course, you're going to have to get that from mom. So just letting her know, hey, I just want to ask some questions to kind of find out how we can, better support them here. And it sounds like you're really giving a great effort to dialogue with her, and you're kind of getting stuck. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I know. Yeah. 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 There's yeah, I would say though again, that those girls are 12 years old, so they might be able to express what they kind of, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish I could answer that a little bit better, but sometimes unless seeing the parent and knowing what might be going on, but I think those might be helpful. So this is for, again, for you to kind of go through if you're presented, with a young person who's even presenting with like ADHD, anything, right? Any behavioral kinds of things. It doesn't always have to be autism. It can be like you're looking at these questions and you're saying, okay, well, what is this person trying to tell me? You're asking yourself those questions. Are they trying to obtain a particular object? This kind of gives a good one on the second page. Are they escaping a task or a situation? Are they maybe trying to get attention, either positive or negative? Are they trying to self-calm, self-regulate? So anytime you see, you know, any, motion with hands and things like that, they're trying to self-regulate. That's what they're trying to do. And so if you're noticing that, right, then that's the time where you're maybe creating that sensory, less sensory around you, and turning off a light. And then, like I said, all the members in the room, we're just gonna take a second, but it would help all of us. So, let's take a, right, yeah, let's just take a sensory break. Yep. Right, exactly, and that's beautiful. What a beautiful way to do it. And so doing things like that, I mean, every child can, have a little Play-Doh, and just with the touch and with the, feeling in their hands and stuff. Yes.
Information about those spinners for kids in college.
So actually they're coming out. There's a lot of different things that are tactile and that kind of create movement. So often it's a good idea. Again, this is for, right, kind of, we're talking a little more extreme here, because you might even have a ring, like like it's a baby ring, like they actually are. It's a teething ring. So depending on the young person, the spinners are a little distracting. So I wouldn't, like that's a just, like, what I mean, for everybody else. And the spinners are, I don't know, for autistic young people, or people, sorry, excuse me, community, if that's even good, because of the sensory noise and the constant, like that noise might not be very good for them. But they have lots of different little, I just had one the other day from a conference I went to, and it's just this, it's like a curly thing, and you just, they can move with that, so there's a lot of different products out there. But even like a rubber with the knobs on it, that's a sensory, right? So if you're finding that somebody in the program has a little bit more extreme, it's just giving them like a little rubber baby thing, and having them, hold it and touch it, and then sometimes they bring it to their mouth, for that sensory piece as well. But it's all about the understanding that, when you see those kinds of behaviors, they really are trying to work out something. And to just be aware, because there is this movement with the behavior then, because if you're not aware of that, and you're not asking these, like asking these kinds of questions, right, it'll just go into this kind of a rage, it's a rage, and then there's recovery. So we want to be aware and proactive as much as we can on the front end, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our kids come through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not on the spectrum, they're not specific, but like trauma related,
Mm-hmm.
or they're coping,
Mm-hmm.
taking for like, I just feel like it's overwhelmed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
About what's going on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what these things be helpful for
Yes. It's so funny, because when I saw the list today, I was like, am I going to be doing trauma, as well as autism? Because I had material at home that I do have for that. And I think that what I'd like to do is actually send you, can you just star, if everybody would like it, just star on the other side of the thing there. So this is actually, if you wanted to have information, I have an ebook, and then if you want to star it and you want that kind of information, I'll send it to you. Because I was sharing with Mrs. Galloway that I had that, and I was like, wow, I could have winged it today, with all that. But so I would, in answer to your question though, if you're saying, would this, so we've got this 12 tips, would it work? Yeah. With somebody who's had trauma, sure. Most of the time with people, who have had experienced trauma, and they're talking about it, right? It's gonna well up, right? So, and to be honest with you, trauma is a very sensitive, and you're gonna have that next, so we don't have to go into it too much, but it is very sensitive. So to be, if they've had significant trauma, and you're digging it up, and they have, you know what I mean, no, like, more, like, no place for that, it's unhealthy. So just be careful with it, okay? Because while you think you're helping, it's actually could create something for them. So trauma therapy is, you know, what I would recommend is just, you know, having them get that consistent support. But what I hear you saying, no. Yes. Well, and yes, I love that you're saying that because that's actually for trauma, people who've experienced trauma, the most important thing for them is safety. You know, to have safe, just feeling safe. And so for you giving them a platform to be able to ask for what they need, you know, and say, you know, just let me know, because they don't, most of the time, they're not comfortable with their voice. Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
So we came around all of that, and it's like, I don't know what to do for you, but let's go out for lunch. I'm like, I'm gonna just let you
Mhm.
talk, and you guys can share what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I understand.
Right, right. And there's this, sometimes people who have experienced trauma are so used to things like that happening that they're desensitized to it. And so you're thinking, holy smokes, what are they, you know, what's going on with them? And, yeah, those are the challenges, but, you know, providing safe, you know, a safe place for them to go, right? You're all in this room for a reason. There's modeling you're doing. There's the ability to say, hey, we are here for you. You know, you have a place to go. You have, you know, someone to lean on if something does come up. You know, that kind of support's really helpful. So if we look at the 12 tips, you know, um, this is going to be more specific to the work you do. Okay. And so learning how the child learns, and you know, what are some of the things that you actually how are you working with the children here? Is it more like, are you have activities? Do you have, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Right. So it sounds like you are, you know, sort of doing some of these things too, but this is specific to autism. So, um, you know, thinking about, okay, so making a quiet place. Those are the sensory things, and sometimes for thinking about making a quiet place, if that's not possible, if you guys have earplugs, you know, like just getting some earplugs, that can help. Um, and that will dissipate the noise that they might be experiencing too. So we talked about the anxiety, right? No anxiety might not look like anxiety. So that withdrawn. So what's really interesting is, you know, as a counselor, people might come into the office and they actually have, they're literally, they're talking to me like this, but excuse me, their biological system is just running amok. Okay, so if she's withdrawing, that's right. You probably already know this, but it's anxiety, right? So just because somebody's withdrawing or wants, you know, kind of like are moving in this direction, they have anxiety too, you know. So anxiety can look like this, and it can look like, you know, just withdrawing from people. Yeah.
I know the research,
Mm-hmm.
we know about learning theory. That theory has been out there. And modeling ideas. So is there any connection with attachment?
with autism?
Yes, and trauma.
So okay. There's two questions there. Does autism have some connection with attachment? I would say no.
My question is,
Yeah.
parenting,
Well, so attachment definitely trauma. That can be a trauma absolutely related experience. If I'm having, think about your environment, right? And I'm not having safety, in where I'm experiencing, where I'm going every night, then there's going to be trauma. Okay. Now, autism is not the same. Autism, like I was mentioning before, is actually stems from, there is a nutritional component. There is this, sometimes it's the early vaccinations that people have an allergic reaction to. It's biological. There's something so in this brain, so when we do the work, right, we're trying to support young people to get to their potential, because what we do is we focus on just the right side of the brain when we're doing our work, okay, with the young people who have right brain weakness, okay? So parenting, of course, we know that that's a very important piece, even when we talk about autism, like how are they managing that? So 25 years ago when I was saying, it started to be something we were actually able to look at and not, and have a solution for. Before that, it was, and I have a nephew that's actually 27 years old now, and he has Asperger's. And I remember his parents in the early years very frustrated with him because they didn't know. They didn't know what was going on, but his behaviors were, not very good, I guess, and so they would basically punish him. Okay? Well, guess what happened? Behaviors escalated. So fortunately for them, it was, in that time frame where just a few years after, they were coming out with, wait a minute, there's something going on here. It's autism. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but the reality is parenting is key for all things, okay? But when we talk about attachment, that's really a significant something that's going on in the family system. So it's maybe somebody's got drug abuse issues, right? Or they're not there when they're supposed to be there. That safety piece is really the part that they're experiencing is not there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
research you're aware of now
Mm-hmm.
is putting autism in more of the biological aspect,
Yeah.
not social.
Right. And that has to do with, honest to goodness, if the young people with autism, and I say young people, sorry, I work with kids, that's why, but, okay, good. And so, the nutrition is a very, very important part. And so most of the time, if somebody's, coming in with autism, it's like, and again, there's different layers, but we want them to get tested. We want them to get tested for an understanding of what they're allergic to, food sensitivities, all of that. Mm-hmm.